So then I got a job in Methodist Dallas ICU. It's a huge hospital. It's an awesome hospital. I loved it. This is one of 3 halls in the ICU I worked in. This is like a 34-bed neuro ICU, all neuro patients. That's where I met Nicole. And again, that's kind of what the patient looked like. I loved it. You either love neuro or you hate it. Most people hate it. Luckily, I ended up liking it. It was really, really cool patients, really sick people, and got to see a lot of things. Is it okay if I tell one story from working there? Please? Okay. So when you start in an ICU, you do like a 13-week internship, if you're lucky, if you get at a good hospital. And my preceptor was Vanessa. And she's like the typical ICU nurse, type A, hardcore. She doesn't take shit from anybody. And I really ended up appreciating her a ton. She was a really, really, really good nurse. But all good things come to an end, and my internship ended, and now I'm Nurse John all by myself. That was scary. So my first day, I remember my first day actually, this is how it happened. I pull up to the hospital, and the neuro ICU is on the 5th floor. So I push the elevator button, go up to the 5th floor, the door's open, and Jennifer, the day shift nurse, charge nurse, is coming on, and I'm going off. And I go, Jennifer, do you really think I'm like ready to be alone? And this is her walking in the elevator. She goes, you better be. That was my first day, alone. But about 2 weeks into that, I got assigned to a patient way on the very end of one of these halls. And this was a guy he was a young guy, maybe in his 50s, mid-50s, 60s, who had suffered a big stroke, big ischemic stroke, and it was non-survivable. So the family had decided to withdraw care. So what that means is you turn off the vent, turn off the meds, and let him pass. So that's my patient for the night. I'd never done this on my own. Remember, I'm 2 weeks into being like a real nurse. And this involves a ton of stuff. So you have to take care of the patient, the family, you have to call the coroner, you have to get the physicians up there to sign the death certificate, you have to get it's a lot of work. And so this is my patient. So I walk down there trying to look confident. I'm like, shaking. Get to the room, and I'm like, hey, I'm John. I'm going to be your nurse. It's going to be great. Wrong thing to say. So they ask me, so I say, okay, this is what we're going to do tonight. This is kind of how it's going to work. Trying to do the best I could to explain all this. And inside the room, right, when this happens, like all the family starts to show up, right? They're like, because they know what's going to happen. So his mom's there. She's this really short little lady. And then all the families are there, the brothers, the cousins, the kids, everything. Everybody's there. So it's this big room of people crowding out into the hallway. And it's my job to take care of all that. So they're like, how long does this normally take? 10 minutes? I had no clue. So he actually had a pacemaker, so we had to get like a magnet and put it over the pacemaker to deactivate it to stop the heart. So we withdraw the tube, I get the magnet. It took about 10 minutes. So I lucked out there. So as the family's leaving, after he passes, the family starts to leave. We close the blinds, give everybody a chance to say their goodbyes, right? And this was the crying part. This is when I was supposed to cry. So shut the blinds, and I go stand outside the room, right? Just kind of waiting for everybody to kind of leave. And the last person to leave is his mom, right? So I'm just standing there. And she comes up, she stands outside the room, and she just reaches around and gives me a big hug. And she looks at me and she goes, thank you, John. I will never forget you. I love you. I just met her 10 minutes ago. But here's why she was saying that. Because in that moment, I represented all nurses ever to her. I represented each of you who are about to go work in hospitals and do this. I represented the medical team. I represented the hospital. I represented healthcare to her in that moment. She didn't care that it was John. What she cared about it was that I took care of her son. And here she was about to leave her son in my hands and go home. The next time she would see him would be at a funeral. When you guys graduate, when you pass the NCLEX, when, not if, and you get those letters after your name, LPN-RN, I don't care. You represent me. You represent Nicole. You represent Chance, Miriam, Marie. You represent every nurse in the world. You represent each other. People never forget that nurse that took care of him in their darkest moment, ever. In fact, I still remember that time with Taz when he was in the NICU. This is our first baby. We were terrified, right? One night we go down to the cafeteria to eat just to get out of the moment for a second. We come back up. God. And Stacy was her name, the nurse. She's bathing him. She's taking care of him. And I knew he was safe. Be that nurse. Okay?